Okay, so let's just jump right into it.
Yeah.
Last night, something really, really dramatic happened in the global financial markets. A crash.
Uh-huh.
And it seemed like the trigger for this was President Trump announcing new tariffs.
Right.
And I'm seeing bloodbath everywhere as I look at the news this morning.
Yeah, it's a very apt term.
So we're going to try to like break this down for you guys listening and figure out just how significant this is and how painful this could be for, everyone.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's the key takeaway here.
So to kick it off, President Trump announcing these sweeping tariffs on imports from over 90 countries.
Right.
That's huge. That's pretty much everything that comes in.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. Anything that's not made in America is going to be impacted by this in some way.
So give us the headline numbers here. What kind of tariffs are we talking about that caused such a crazy reaction?
So the baseline is 10% on all imports.
Across the board?
Across the board. Wow.
But then it gets more targeted. So for China specifically, we're looking at a 34% tariff on their goods.
Oof.
The EU and Japan are facing tariffs in the 20 to 25% range. Vietnam gets hit especially hard with a 46% tariff.
46.
Yeah.
For Vietnam.
Yeah, that's going to be a major problem for a lot of businesses that rely on those supply chains.
Right. And if we're talking about things like cars and certain metals from Canada and Mexico.
Yep, those are facing a 25% tariff.
Okay, so these are not small increases.
No, these are significant.
And I imagine, other countries aren't just going to sit back and take this.
Of course not.
Right.
China immediately retaliated with a 34% tariff of their own.
Oh, wow.
On all goods coming from the U.S. And that takes effect April 10th.
Okay, so very, very soon.
Very soon.
So that's going to have a huge impact
on any business that exports to China.
Right. And so this is looking like a trade war that could really, really hurt. Oh, absolutely. This is going to affect costs and prices for everyone.
Okay, so we've got these big tariffs announced, and then let's talk about the markets and how they reacted because Friday was brutal.
It was brutal.
Yeah.
The Dow Jones plunged over 2,200 points
in one day.
In one day, a 5.5% drop.
Yeah, that's the worst we've seen.
Yeah, since June of 2020.
Yeah, since the pandemic.
It's a massive loss of value. Just gone like that.
And it wasn't just the Dow. If you were looking at your 401k or whatever retirement account you've got, you probably saw red across the board.
Oh, absolutely. Everything took a hit. The S&P 500 is down 17.4% from its February peak.
Okay.
That's nearing bear market territory.
And that's significant for anyone who's invested in the stock market.
It is. It means the value of your investments has dropped.
Right.
Significantly.
And now we've got the Nasdaq, which is heavily influenced by tech companies.
Yeah.
That's officially entered a bear market.
That's right.
Down 20% from its high point in December.
It's been a rough few months for tech investors.
So basically, no matter what you're invested in, you're feeling the pain right now.
It's pretty widespread, yeah.
And this wasn't just a U.S. thing.
Yep.
Right? If you look globally, this was a global sell-off.
Global sell-off. Japan's Nikkei index dropped 8%.
Wow.
Hong Kong's Hang Seng took a 10% dive.
10%.
And Germany's DAX fell 5%.
So this shows you just how connected our economies are.
Oh, yeah. Everything's tied together.
When something like this happens in the U.S., it sends shockwaves around the world.
Absolutely impacts investments, business confidence everywhere.
And even, if you look at things like oil and crypto and gold, those all saw some big swings as well.
Yeah, I mean, oil prices fell sharply, almost 6%.
Which seems like it could be good news for,
at the pump,
gas prices. But it really reflects concerns about the global economy slowing down.
Exactly.
Bitcoin also took a hit, dropping over 5%.
Yeah, crypto's not immune to this kind of thing.
Right. And then gold, which is the traditional safe haven, saw its price skyrocket to a record high.
People are looking for safety.
Yeah. So I mean, all of this is just pointing to a lot of fear.
Yeah.
Uncertainty in the markets.
Absolutely.
So the immediate reaction is pretty clear. But what does this all mean for the average person?
Yeah.
In the long run, are we looking at a potential recession because of these tariffs?
Well, that's the big question, isn't it? And a lot of experts are getting really worried about that.
Okay. And are there specific numbers out there?
Yeah. JPMorgan, for example, they've increased their probability of a U.S. recession to 60%. And they're directly linking that increase to these tariffs.
Wow.
They're seeing these tariffs as a drag on economic growth.
60% chance of a recession.
It's a sobering thought.
Yeah, that's not good.
Yeah.
And I know JPMorgan's not the only one to say this.
S&P Global is also pretty pessimistic. They're estimating a 30 to 35% chance of a recession.
Okay, so lower.
Lower, yeah.
But still significant.
Still very significant, and they're also warning about a potential spike in inflation.
Because of the tariff?
Because of the tariffs, yeah, potentially as much as 2%.
Okay, so what does that mean for me and you, at the grocery store or?
It means things are going to get more expensive.
Okay.
Everyday goods are going to cost more.
And how much more expensive?
Well, they estimate it could be the equivalent of a $660 billion annual tax increase.
Wow, for American consumers.
For American consumers, yeah.
So $660 billion.
That's a lot of money.
That's a lot of money. And how does that break down for the average family?
The Tax Foundation has looked into that.
Okay.
And they estimate that the average family could see an added cost of around $2,100 per year.
Because of these tariffs.
Because of these price increases, yeah.
So that's a lot of money.
It is. It's a real impact on people's budgets.
Right. And I know we've been talking about the broad economic picture.
Right.
But we're already seeing this hit specific industries.
Yeah.
And even small businesses.
Absolutely.
Right here in the U.S.
I mean, tech companies that manufacture in China, like Apple and NVIDIA,
Oh.
they saw their stock prices drop.
Right.
Retailers like Nike and Tesla also experienced big drops.
Right.
But it's the small businesses that are really feeling the pain.
Like the appliance shop owner in New Jersey.
Right. Pat Muscaritolo, he's actually warning that he might have to close down.
Because of the tariff.
Yeah. He's facing price increases of 30 to 40% on the appliances he imports.
Wow.
And for a small business with tight margins,
right,
that can be devastating.
And so, you could see this happening all over the country.
Absolutely. Local businesses struggling, closing down jobs, lost.
Right.
It's a ripple effect.
So real consequences for real people.
Exactly.
Okay, so what is the White House saying about all of this to justify these tariffs?
Well, President Trump is defending them as necessary medicine.
Okay.
He's arguing that they're essential to protect American industries, and that eventually foreign leaders will be forced to negotiate better trade deals.
Okay.
His advisor, Kevin Hassett, has also been trying to downplay the idea that they're intentionally trying to harm the market.
Okay.
He's saying the goal is to deliver for American workers.
So basically they're saying that this is all part of the plan?
Yeah, a plan to make America stronger in the long run.
But that's got to be a tough sell.
It is.
When you see the markets crashing and all these fears of a recession.
Yeah, people are scared and they're not really buying that argument.
And what about the international reaction? What are other countries saying about this?
They're not happy.
I imagine not.
China is accusing the U.S. of bullying and violating international trade rules.
Okay.
The European Union has pledged to defend its own interests, and they're open to negotiation. But there's a lot of anger and concern globally.
Right.
There have even been protests against these tariffs. Yeah. Some people are calling it economic warfare.
So basically, the U.S. is kind of on its own here.
Pretty much.
And it doesn't sound like this is over.
No, not at all.
What are we expecting when the markets open again?
It's not looking good.
Oh, no.
U.S. futures are signaling another big drop. As of this morning, the Dow futures were down another 3.3%.
Okay.
And the Nasdaq futures were down a whopping 4.6%.
So potentially even bigger losses?
It's looking that way, yeah.
And then you've got the Federal Reserve.
Right.
They're in a really tough spot here.
Yeah, they are.
Because they're trying to control inflation. But now you've got this potential recession.
Made worse by these tariffs. It's a tough balancing act.
So what are they likely to do?
Well, these tariffs are going to push inflation higher.
Right, because things are more expensive.
Exactly. But at the same time, the risk of a recession would normally call for lower interest rates.
To stimulate the economy.
Right. So Jerome Powell, he's acknowledged the inflation risks, but he's also hesitant to cut rates.
So they're
in a bind.
They're stuck. Yeah, they got to be really careful here.
Are there any efforts in Congress to push back against these tariffs?
There is some bipartisan concern.
Okay.
Senator Grassley has proposed a bill that would limit the president's power to impose tariffs.
Okay.
But given the current political climate,
right,
it's unlikely to pass.
Okay, so for now, these tariffs are here to stay.
Yeah.
So to sum it all up,
yeah,
these tariffs have caused a major crash in the global markets. The tariffs are big, the losses are widespread, and the fear of a recession and increased costs for households is very real.
Absolutely.
And it sounds like, everyone needs to be paying attention to this.
Yeah, this is not something you could just ignore.
Yeah.
It has the potential to impact everyone's financial lives.
So as the markets brace for another day of trading and the real-world impact of these tariffs starts to become clear.
Right. It's evident that this is a crisis with no easy solution.
Yeah, no easy answers here.
And as one analyst put it, there will be blood.
That about sums it up.
Yeah. So listeners, you need to understand the magnitude of this event and the potential consequences.
This is serious stuff.
Yeah, this is serious stuff. Pay attention.
Pay attention.
All right, well, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
We'll be back soon with more updates on this developing situation.
Absolutely, stay tuned.